anxiety is writing the future that you don't want. It's really focusing on what you don't want. So you have the ability to rewrite that. And, I told her to imagine, 15 minutes out after you've given that presentation, what's that going to feel like? And that's huge. So we have that ability for future, for anxiety, but we also have that ability about our past. We write the story about our past.
Kimberly Lebbing, welcome to the show, guys. You don't know how much fun I have today because I get to have Kim on the show, a great personal development coach, a great podcaster. Her show brings great insight. Kim, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me today. I was looking forward to it. Looking forward to the conversation. I know it's going to be great.
We've done some podcasts together, and it always seems like we really hit on some heartfelt conversations. Really my judgment is that these are where people are today, that no matter how overwhelmed we are, when we start from the heart and kind of work our way out, it seems like we usually cover some pretty good ground.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That the world needs more of that. Business owners need more of that. Entrepreneurs need more of that. And realizing it can change everything.
As you start to work with great entrepreneurs and you start to do the work that you do with them, where do you start?
Oh, good question. Well, when I start with people, usually it's, they're wrapped up in their business and maybe something's not going right. They're just in the day-to-day grind. They're feeling overwhelmed. They're stressed. And where I start is, let's slow down a little bit and see what are the real problems that you're having. What's the thing behind the stress? What's the thing that's hiding behind the overwhelm? Let's get to the core of it,
I,
because it's usually much deeper than what they think it is.
I mean, for sure, I notice people in that they're taken out by overwhelmed. It's almost like they're just that's the shutdown, right? As soon as I go to overwhelmed, I've disconnected to all my creativity. I've disconnected from all my ability to take the world's possibilities and bring it to a solution. All of that shuts down, and I don't know. It's come out. I'm overwhelmed. It's too hard. All of that kind of, it's a shutdown, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is. And what I see, like some of the underlying things that are driving that, I see guilt. Like there's guilt about the business, like I'm not doing enough, I'm not where I need to be, so I'm going to keep working, 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 working. And then there's guilt about not spending time with the family because you're working, working, working constantly. And then there's also people pleasing. So some are overwhelmed, which is also guilt driven, because they keep saying yes to things that don't really align with what they want to do. And then they have guilt there also. And all that guilt leads to overwhelm and stress and not really doing what you wanted to do in your business or whatever it was that you were put on this planet to do.
It's kind of funny, right? Like we get into business, and we oftentimes for me, I got into business and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. In fact, I'm 25 years into doing this thing, and I still wake up many days with imposter syndrome, right? I wake up. I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years. I have millions of dollars. I mean, I've got 9 companies. I've done this successfully, continuously for 25 years, and I still wake up with those moments, those days when I start to fret, and it gets fear kicks in. Usually around hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Right? The business has these ebbs and tides to our expansion, and in there's some, there's that expand, right, and then organize, but there's that middle piece that we talked about. Is it's confusing as hell, and sometimes I just get overwhelmed by that, and I notice myself like, you just got overwhelmed. Are you just trying to shut down? because in overwhelmed, I become victim to it, right? And there's really no agency there. Like overwhelmed, oh, it gets too much. I need to go take a break. And the truth is, it's okay. It's okay to be a little uncomfortable, right? There's actually, as you grow as a leader, and finding that uncomfortable part of you that doesn't necessarily have all the answers, there's actually a gift in that.
Mm,
And but that's not something I was raised with. I was not raised to be okay feeling uncomfortable. I was, in fact, I was, my mother made sure I never felt uncomfortable. My father maybe didn't, but my mother worked her ass off to make sure I had all the comforts a child could have. And
mm.
anytime I felt uncomfortable, she's like, "No," she helped soothe me from that. And I'm not blaming her, but she wanted me to have what she thought was great, and it wasn't necessarily about feeling uncomfortable. So today I have to like learn that again.
Right, right. And you pointed something out that I think is such a great skill that a lot of people don't pay attention to it. They ignore it. And that is, you notice the overwhelm and think, oh, well, maybe that's a clue that I need to slow down or that I need a break. And this has been a topic for me. I actually coached a group this morning, and this is what we talked about was the need to always feel like you're doing something and never really slowing down because we're like our cell phones. We need to be charged too.
I was just watching some with Warren Buffett. He's like, if a leader's not spending 2 hours in his office a day just thinking, it's probably a pretty unsuccessful company. Now, I've never gotten to that level. I don't know how to sit and think that long. But even if I just take moments at a time, and there's just I'm overwhelmed by things that come at me. Right there's social media and the computer and my family and there's just a lot. Right, there's a lot coming at me in a given day. If I can take a few moments at a time, I don't know if I'll ever get to 2 hours, which just seems like such a gift. But if I got to just a few moments a day where I could stop and just kind of take a moment away from the heavy, hard thinking, the creative part of me that's connected to all is, which sounds hokey, but that real creative part of me that comes with solutions maybe could come out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's key. It really is. It's key because if we never slow down, it doesn't give our brains time to rest and tap into that creativity. And especially if you're leading an organization, it's so important to be able to recognize when you need a break. And like I said, a lot of people don't do it because it's like guilt driven.
Oh yeah. Right, I have to work. Like I have to work hard. I mean, it's the American culture. I mean, look here. I work hard. Like we walk around bragging about. I worked 12 hours yesterday. The guys who get it done work hard. In fact, I would say that's one of the joys of. I stepped back from being president, and my wife took over,
Mm.
and she like implemented like breaks are great. People who work from home a couple of days are great. I'm like, no way, the Spartan work camp. We work hard. And, maybe some of that was okay. I'm not going to say it was all terrible, but it's not sustainable, right?
Right.
You look back over your path and you're like, there's some dead bodies back there. I beat some people up.
Right.
It's not real sustainable for myself or the people I work with. And she's kind of brought in a different culture. Like they talk.
Mm.
And every once in a while, I'll stop in a hallway and people will be talking. I'm like, my nature is like, come on, let's get to it. And I find myself just going, all right, stop. Let's like see what they're talking about. Maybe not just it's not like BS, but just see each other, right? The human part of us that wants to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to connect. This morning I was actually in person with a group and they had a little puppy in the office. Like we were just talking about how, they've got a stressful day going on and the dog will come up and start licking their hand while they're trying to work and but even little things like that, those stops in the hallway, it's important for us to be human and to connect and slow down. It's for our mental health, we are way too connected, on a daily basis with bombarding information coming at us constantly, and it's really important to slow down.
We've even implemented, my wife really even implemented that as a tactic, right? So there's some people who leave the office and there's three or four of them that go walk one way. They kind of take a couple-mile walk and they do it the same time every day. And they just walk. They leave their phones at the office and they just walk. Now, sometimes when it's really cold, they don't, but most days they put even a heavy jacket in the middle of winter. They take a little walk together and just walk away from the office. There's some other people that have some morning rituals that they do together, go to the gym together. There is something that as we grow, I don't think that that was something that was around in the 80s and 90s. There was like this real grind, and maybe even, and I mean, I even perpetuated, as long as I ran things, I was really more always on. In fact, I still find myself having to force myself to do those breaks, right? To find the time. And the podcast has helped, right? Being able to do this podcast where I stop and go have some really interesting conversations in the middle of my day, brings me a lot of joy. So it does force, and I get more creative thinking because I talk to people like yourself that, lead companies in doing that. So I think we have to find that, or actually create it and kind of force it a little bit. Uh, or will I don't know, my judgment is that my brain will talk myself out of it.
Right, right, right. You're right. And I think it's also important to know that not there's not one thing that works for everybody.
Sure.
You really got to kind of find what it is. I know in my own business, for years I would try and do, all the things that, the coaches would tell you to do. And and it was this grind atmosphere that you were describing, this hustle, grind, do this, do that, 12-hour, 14-hour, 16-hour days and never turning off. And it, I was more productive when I finally realized that all of that wasn't for me. And I just went with where I felt like I needed to be, kind of almost like an inner knowing of where do I need to show up and what do I need to be doing, what feels aligned for me. And that's when everything changed. And I actually got busier, but in a relaxed way. It's kind of a little bit hard to explain, but
Uh,
but
but
it's
I think there's something to that. Like I noticed that I had the last 3 weeks. I jumped back into some significance, right? As a founder of the company, I kind of hold myself accountable for thinking, kind of future looking, kind of thought leading in the company. But I jumped into a bunch. We had some projects that ran behind, and I love to go take off my shirt and show you the S on my chest. I get off like let me show you guys how good I am at this, and I jump in. And the last 3 weeks, I have solved lots. I mean, it's just been one problem after another. And truth is, I love doing it. It's exhausting, but I look back over it today. I was sitting down this morning going, it started yesterday. I said, look, I got to stop. I have a job to do with this company. That became kind of like a little bit of a buzz,
mm,
right? Like that grind, and I'm tired. I'm worn out. Oh, right. And it actually started becoming less effective because what I find myself doing is I start to gnaw at things. I gnaw on people and ideas, and I maybe even over communicate, right? And sometimes I find it wearing people out. Like having an idea to do something, like ask someone to do something and giving them some time to get that done. Maybe even if it's not the exact time I expect it to be, but allowing that to happen and not having to go on their brain, is probably way more fulfilling for them, and it allows me to work on some other ideas. But sometimes I get a little bit like, I get on it like a dog on a bone, and my judgment is that when I go there as a person, that kind of shuts down. And it's not my highest me, right? That really gets
right.
below the line. I go below the line, and I'm going to show them. I'm gonna muscle it down, and what ends happening again? I look back over, I'm like, there's some dead bodies again. Right? Even now, I feel ashamed of myself when I say it. Like I just said that out loud. I'm like, hmm, after all this work you've done, you still do that, and that's the part to have some grace for ourselves, right? Like no leader is going to be perfect at this every day. And I'm not trying to give an excuse, but I find that's where that shame and guilt kicks in. That It's okay. You're gonna go through ups and downs as a leader, and you're gonna be great at it some days, and then some days you want to bring an S out of your chest and you want to jump into the fire. And then there's some days where you'll be amazing. You'll go, oh, there'll be like a glow off of you, and enjoy. You'll never be one all the time.
Right, right, totally. I mean, everybody has up and down days. Everybody has up and down times throughout the days. I mean, you can be coming in and out of, I guess, different levels of being your true you, so to speak. It's important to me, for me, it's important. What keeps me more grounded is to check in on what my intention is about something,
Mm.
probably more than anything else. So, is the intention, is it for the highest good of the other person or whatever it is that I'm trying to get done? Or am I in a hurry and I just want to get it done? Because that intention is coming from a different place.
Mm.
And then it creates kind of a stress energy that goes out to everybody that's around or that's taking it in.
Well, but sometimes we're not even cognizant of our intentions. The um, one of the practices that we'll do around here now is that we'll check in with that, right? Like oftentimes I don't check in with my body. I don't check in with my brain. I kind of get disconnected and just become like on this rhythmic pattern of do, 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 do. And I got to slow down and just kind of check in for a second. And my real judgment is that's one of the biggest movements that's propelled us forward
Mm.
is slowing down and getting a little bit more intentional, getting out of just the head, right? Maybe even getting into the heart a little bit about, all right, is this for the greater good of what we're doing here? Is this kind of up to where our mission's really about? Let's kind of let's check in. Where am I at on this? Am I above the line right now? Am I working on my creative, my coaching, my inspirational side of me, or am I below the line? Right? Am I fear based, negative? Am I looking for attention? Um, is there something that's missing in my significance?
Right. Right. And you made me think about, and I don't know which book I read it out of because I'll have 3 books going at any given time, so I have to look it up. But most of us make decisions out of our head, but our head is not the best decision maker. When we make them out of our heart and really check in with what's the intentions behind it, that's usually the best place to make a decision.
Yeah.
And that made me think of that.
I there was a book that I just got done reading, 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And there's a group of people, it's called CLG, Conscious Leadership Group, and that I kind of tapped into afterwards. And they spent a lot of time talking about this imaginary line, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of like above the line, below the line, right? When I'm above the line, I'm inspirational, kind of creative, really in that spot. That when I'm below the line, I'm that real negative, that victim, the villain, right? I
Yeah.
have this kind of mentality that really gets in there, and it's similar, right? A lot of times it's that part of my brain that is maybe in my prehistoric brain, right? Maybe it's even that part that was looking for dinosaurs all the time, right? It may have had some function a couple of centuries ago, right? When I would wake up and make sure there was no dinosaurs under my bed, or there's no dinosaurs attacking my cave or whatever. But today I've got more abundance than I've ever have. There's all kinds of solutions I could tap into when I'm not there, and if I could, first of all, just like you said, just get aware of that. Now, what are the practices that you do with groups to help them get aware of where they're at?
Um, I do a few things. So, I have a specific process that I use. I call it 4-hour rapid results because it's literally in 4 hours that where we identify what that thing is that's the main I guess problem or the underlying emotion that's behind the behavior that keeps showing up. And in that process, in that 4 hours, that's where we shift how they store it up here. And when you can shift how you store that, it's like taking what you learned from it. That's when behaviors going forward can be different, because you're literally changing the programming, the filter that's going on. And so that's a core place. That's where I start everybody as far as centering goes, because after they go through that, then they're not so reactive. Things happen a little bit more naturally, and they're not coming from that below the line place. I mean, they do. I mean, everybody does. Nobody's perfect, right? But it's not a constant. Like maybe they've been living at below that line for a while, and this brings them into a more natural, balanced kind of place.
I feel it. Like I feel like I spend a lot of time below the line. In fact, I judge that that might be a majority of my time, and my goal is to kind of raise that up. How do I notice it? If I can notice it, then I can kind of do something about it, right? And I can get to what you're talking about. I can get there. So it's the 4 hour rapid results process. I like
Right.
so first identify the what, right?
Yeah, you identify, yeah, what it is.
What
What's the real problem? You know,
give me an
if
example.
you're, yeah. So somebody that wants to scale their business, they want to, grow, hire more employees. They haven't been able to do it for whatever reason, or they're not able to get to that next level for, they're holding themselves back and they don't know why. They like, maybe they hire people and then they take it back, or they give, things away and then they take it back, that kind of thing. That can be the underlying problem could be trust. So it's slowing down enough to identify that trust may be the core issue. And if trust is the core issue, that's going to show up everywhere. It's going to show up in how you hire people, what kind of, jobs you're giving out to people, how much you micromanage or not. It's going to show up in your relationships. It's going to show up, with your spouse, your girlfriend, boyfriend, significant others, in your friendships, and it's going to show up how you parent. It shows up everywhere. So that one shift can make a huge difference in everything else.
It's funny, I used to have a friend of mine. He's saying, excuse the expression. He goes, "You can't be an asshole in just one part of your life." Right.
It's
Yeah,
true.
and I'm like, that's looks straight at me, but he's like, "You are that way everywhere you go. You might hide it for a minute, but it's gonna show up. These fears, these character, what character defects or character issues that I have that are holding me back, they show up in all of my existence. And as I start to, as I find a coach like you that helps me see that, there's the gift. Like having someone who I trust, like yourself, that can look at my characters, look at my characteristics and go, well, look, let's just look at this for a second. This is going to hold you back. And if we don't find a way for you to find trust in the people that you're bringing on board, and that's not a natural, like letting go. It used to be, right? We used to have, great community where you trusted each other, right? There was, I would even venture to say, when we were tribal, that was part of what the tribe worked on best. We as a tribe worked together to build and live and survive, and it was our interest to make sure that each other did well, right? Or we were going to die, right? We're going to, we were small little tribes of primitive people. They wanted to make sure that each other were successful, and or we would die as a group. And somewhere the industrial revolution came along, and that tribe got broken up, and it's hard to find that which I trust, right? Because I get mixed messages all the time. There's all kinds of things that are influencing that: religion, community, politics, just stories that are coming at me. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but they're it's making it difficult for me to understand what I'm supposed to be doing necessarily. And finding that trustworthy person, I think there's the gift in having, Kim come in, and you come in and spend time with me and go, all right, look, let's look at, having a coach that I can trust has made the most difference in my life. I look through my career of people that I've worked with, and those coaches have changed my life. I
Mm.
mean, dramatically, because I can't trust my brain, right? Like, remember Fred? We've talked about Fred before. Fred in my head is not trustworthy. He is not a person I can count on for great advice. Oftentimes he's a little cynical. He doesn't want to change. He's frustrating. So Fred in my head, uh, I can't trust. I get a coach like you. I now have someone I can bounce something off of and trust.
Right, right. Having that support, whether it's a coach or a community or whatever it is, whoever it is it's huge. Um, we all it wouldn't be blind. We all have blind spots, and it wouldn't be called blind spots if you could see them.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Now what I like about him is today I have coaches I work with, and it takes an army to raise this mind. I've now culminated a group of people around me. I've got doctors and therapists and men's groups and sponsors and people who surround my life and development coaches and business coaches. And I tell people I get to lay back into their arms, right? I trust that I've got a group of people around me who, when they call me out or see something, they can challenge me in a healthy way, in the way that I've always wanted, right? And if there used to be a time when I'm in AA, and early on in AA, you'd walk into a room and an old timer would tell you, "Shut up and sit down, kid." Right? And there was like something about that it almost pulled you into it. Like you almost wanted someone to finally tell you what to do because you were messing up so bad, and
Mm,
that guy you could trust. Right? Because they were an old timer, and he kinda knew that he was gonna show you how to get there. Today, I judge that sometimes when newcomers come into AA, we were a little bit softer, right? Some of that harshness they're not really fit for, there's not that trust of that, right? There's oftentimes a little bit of and we don't scare someone off because they've never been talked to that way, right? They've never been loved by someone. It's sometimes, tough love, right?
right,
A lot of us
right.
haven't had any tough love in our life, right? Uh and so we shy away from it, but the truth is, I really do believe I want someone I trust that has some skills to help, guide me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because if you don't, you can't fix something that you're not aware of.
Right.
You can't move forward. You can't grow your business if you're not aware of all the blind spots. Um, it's just the way it works.
I see a couple things that I believe that cause them. I see reasons why I think people get stuck is that, one of my beliefs is that people start to get stuck because all that guilt, shame, and blame that we carry.
Hmm.
Right in there, just like if I was drunk or high all day, when I'm emotionally unsober, right? When I can fear, anger, resentments, all that, those character defects that kind of stop my creative thinking. How do you start to look at that and help someone start to get unstuck?
So um, those, it's my belief and my training is that a lot of those are formed subconsciously before the age of 7. So you really have to go back. You have to go back and look at like so what were the things that you were around growing up? Like, and not to blame them because we
Sure.
don't want to go there. We don't want to put you like in a victim state, but what kind of what were the things that you were shown? What did you learn from, your parents, your caregivers? What kind of behaviors did you learn? Are those the same things that are showing up now? A lot of this can be generational. I mean, in my own family, my grandma, my dad all had tons of anxiety, tons and tons and tons of anxiety. That gets, you pass that stuff down. They've got research on that. You pass that DNA, those emotions get passed down to us. So it's important to look back at those, the programming that you received. And also, like, when do you get triggered? Like, is it, what's it about? I talked to somebody yesterday, a friend of mine, a coach, called me where there was a conflict between her and another coach. And it was very much And I really think this is the essence of probably most arguments. There was very much a I'm right and I'm going to prove I'm right. And she really wanted my opinion on who was right. Uh, and I finally asked her, so what's your intention when you talk, to this person? What's your intention behind it? Is it to be right? Or are you trying to, really help the relationship? And I think that when we can really drill down to what's our true intentions behind something, that can reveal a lot.
Sometimes I don't see it though. Like I get, that do I want to be right or do I want to be happy conversation? There are times when, Fred pops up and he's trying to drive my ego somewhere. Like, all right, kid, you're supposed to know something. And it's usually fear based. I'm going to like lose something financially. I'm going to use something emotionally or sexually or something. I'm going to lose something that's going to affect my one of those things in my life. And I, I check out and I get stubborn about it. Like, nope, I'm going to be right on this one. And even though I know that being stubborn's rarely served me well, right? There are times when I just dig my heels in. I'm like, I'm just going to get off on this right now. And sometimes can't even stop myself. I just noticed the bus is rolling and all right now, but the joy is that I can, oftentimes, if I can stay emotionally sober or get back to emotionally sobriety, right? I can, go to bed, wake up the next day and look at it and go, okay, that might not have been the highest level I could be at, right? That might have been the lower me acting out there. I might owe that person, an amends, or today I try to clean those things up fast. The faster I clean them up, the less weight I carry on my shoulders, the more creativity I stay in. And it's not always perfect. I'm not, in fact, most of the time, I'm not perfect. And, but today I try to clean it up much faster, right? If I can get back to that cleanup part and, get back in integrity, then, then there's some, in my old days, I wouldn't even mention it. I would just let it fly by and it would be in the room and oftentimes not dealt with. And believe it or not, that those are the things that are in groups that work groups that we work with, say, hey, someone said they were going to do something, they didn't do it, but they kind of blow it off. You're in the middle of a meeting, in the back of your mind, you're like, yeah, that guy did never, he was supposed to have those, that budget to me by 2 o'clock yesterday, and I got the budget 5 minutes before this meeting, and now I'm supposed to talk about this, and there's and it breaks down my affinity for that person, which then ultimately breaks down my communication with them, right? And then my real ability to be in relationship with that person because there's a underlying resentment there, right?
Right.
I mean, and that happens in groups all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. And I think that and you said it, it's being aware. So just to use your analogy about the line, if you can be aware of when you're under that line, when you're above that line, and really pay attention to, what were the triggers? What was it that made me go below that line? Was it something they said? Well, and then asking yourself, what's that about? Or what about that is about me that I'm getting offended or feeling like I need to defend my side or prove that I'm right. Like, what is it about that? And majority of the time, there's a need. There's a need. I mean, it goes a lot deeper. It's going back to those filters. I'm going like way deep now, but I'm like, maybe
That's
there's a need. There's a fulfillment that's maybe you perceive that you're missing. That you're maybe in that moment you're feeling unloved or unwanted, or you need to prove yourself, or you're not feeling confident. There's something else that's there, and paying attention to that, and then ask yourself, well, is that true? Is it really true, or is it not?
the thing is, it's taken me some discovery. Like I didn't know those things right off the get go. I would say that a couple of the ones that really were triggers from early age. I'm talking 5 or 6 years old on the playground. I can remember, and one of my number one triggers that I've been defending my entire life is I'm not good enough, right? And or I'm not poor. Right. I've been defending that one. If you ask anybody who's ever gone out to dinner with me, I've never let anybody buy me dinner. I buy everybody dinner because I'm trying to defend. There's a story that started from the playground when, I went to a private school and my mother worked at Denny's and I would sew patches on my pants. And, somewhere in there, I felt different. I remember feeling the kids made fun of all the patches. I probably had, 10, 15 because you're a kid. You slide into every, little boy, you slide into every, grass field you could find. And she would patch my pants. And, I was like Raggedy Ann. I had like Raggedy Ann pants, or Andy pants. They were all kind of patched. And I remember someone made fun of me. And somewhere I've noticed that I noticed, the years of therapy have noticed that that was one of the things that I defended, right? And now there's some of that is great in that it's become part of my winning formula, right? It's the driver and all the businesses that I have, all the stuff that I have, but it's also some of my losing proposition out there in that it doesn't give me the ability to be with people where they give to me and I feel, taken care of by others. Oftentimes that same behavior that's won for me has also become something that, um, can be a or is a deficit in my ability to be real vulnerable with people or say that and that awareness, that one awareness alone, it was a great one to get, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us have those type of issues that are embedded in our being that when we see them, it can be valuable to know that that's there.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And when you're aware of it, when you're aware that you're doing it, that's you can change it. There's strategies, there's things out there where you can change that and then it's not a problem. It's working with like deconstructing the strategy up here so that you're not doing it. You put a different strategy in. I don't want to get in too much in the weeds with that,
That's
but it can be done. I mean, it can be done. It's just really digging into what is it that triggers. And it sounds like you've like in the example you gave, it sounds like you've identified what that is.
Well, I think so. Another one was we were poor. My mother worked at Denny's, and I carried. I mean, look, you'd have if you'd be like this if your mom worked at Denny's. We were poor. My dad died young. There was a whole story that was in that bag of crap that I carried around in life. And then one day I reformulated that. Right, I went
Mm,
back and looked at it and said, "Look, my mom sent me to private school. She paid for my private elementary school until I was 25. Right, $25 a month. She paid for that until I was 25." And when I went back and reformulated that thought alone, it's giving here. My mother worked at Denny's, and so I could go to a private school, right? She would sew zippers on clothes, so I could go to a private school. And then once I reformulated that thought, it became inspirational. Like now, when I get tired, I think to myself, "Man, I'm just tired or worn out." I remember what she did and how hard it was for her to do what she did, and I'm like, I owe her, right? I don't have time to be lazy. I owe that woman back. What she gave me was this gift of an education that I could be, somewhere I could see something bigger than we were, right? I mean, we lived in a very poor neighborhood, and she would send me this, great private school, and I get to be with some great people that help me, see the world differently. And today, that's a motivational part of my life rather than the part that I walk from shame from. It's like now it's like, all right, great. I can do that. And how do we do that with others? We go back and find those, right? I think
yeah, yeah. You actually hit it. So I wanted to and you made me think of something because we write stories constantly.
Mhm.
Constantly. And we write stories about the future. Yesterday I talked to somebody that's in a networking group that I'm in, and they're giving a presentation next week, and they were talking about how they're, anxious and feeling fearful about getting in front of people and talking in front of this group. And it's that is nothing more than we write anxiety is writing the future that you don't want. It's really focusing on what you don't want. So you have the ability to rewrite that. And, I told her to imagine, 15 minutes out after you've given that presentation, what's that going to feel like? And that's huge. So we have that ability for future, for anxiety, but we also have that ability about our past.
Mm.
We write the story about our past. In my past, I remember growing up and really, I had a verbally abusive dad. I grew up really low self-esteem and just really didn't think a whole lot about myself. I get in high school and I never really thought of myself as a leader or as, anything like that. Yet, when I look back now, because I went back and I've worked on so much of that. And I was like head of the newspaper. I was leader. I was leading all these different things and not even really owning any of that and thinking, oh, I'm just this lowly being that's, this, that, or the other, and just not even realizing or appreciating who I was in that moment. But I wrote that story. I wrote the story that I wasn't good enough and that I wasn't this and I wasn't that, when the real story was that I was. I was the whole time and I was actually doing it. I just didn't even know I was doing it.
It's amazing. We are the best storytellers, and now that's as a society, that's really what's been our winning, what's made us who we are, is our ability to tell these amazing stories. Some are true or some are not true, but at the same time, some of those stories, that those narratives that are out there, you're like, I kind of wonder why I do that. My judgment is that I came from a group of people that maybe were a little scarce. Some of the people who trained me weren't the best trainers, and some of the people who trained those people weren't the best trainers. And I don't know that, as we're moving forward, right now more than ever, that's one of the reasons why personal development coaching is so important for people, is having someone that they can trust, somewhere they can go to. It used to be in the religious hands, right? But as we've looked at the religion today, people are having a hard time with religion.
Yeah.
You used to be able to go to your church or your pastor or your priest or someone and get that advice, and that that whole network it's changing rapidly.
Right. Right.
Having a personal coach that is not just, life, and also life's got a lot more complicated than it was when we had a priest who could, give you a couple of Hail Marys and send you on your way. Today, it's just so much more complicated, and that new coach has to take in consideration the way we live, the food that we eat, the stuff that we, the entire part of our being. That's a lot different than it was just understanding your spiritual being, which I would venture to say as important as well. It's another part of our being that I've got to work on it. My ability to, connect to my spirit and the universe and all that stuff that's out there. Because, as I clear up those messes and I get out of that shame and guilt, I work on those things we talk about, those stories about my past. I feel like I get more spiritually connected to some greater access to power.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to put the dogma of God in there, because there's a lot of people who have a lot of real anxiety around God or religion. But there's something about me that when I am emotionally sober, right, that part that's a little clear of clear vision, I have an intuitive being that's so damn creative, it blows me away.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. It's that connection with your heart. It goes back to that, like getting out of your own head and that inner knowing, that heart connection that just leads with good intention, leads with like an unconditional type of love and less judgment, and it allows us to create on a level that most people are not aware of, and even if you are aware of, you're probably not there.
Yeah. Well, Kim,
Yeah.
my judgment is that's why you're such an amazing coach. Your access to these things, the transformation that you do with groups and people, I know that, uh, that you're what we're looking for. Coaches like you that are what people are looking for, what business leaders are looking for. As people want to get a hold of you, where's the best place to find you? First of all, let's put a plug in for the podcast, because your podcast is
Yeah.
amazing,
Thank
right?
you. Thank you.
So,
It's so the podcast is called Mind for Success. And I appreciate that plug. So would
well,
appreciate you. Yeah.
You got to get up. Mind for Success is not just it's not just it's some pretty good stuff. I've been on the podcast. I worked with you, and it's your work is phenomenal. You know what you're up to is great. And if people want to get a hold of you as a coach, where can they get up? Okay,
Yeah, well, I'm on all the socials, so you can find me everywhere, even TikTok. But if you want to make it easy, you can go to my website, kimberlylebbing.com, and all my socials are on there. You can email me, you can reach out. I've got some freebie things there, resources for you as well.
Well, Kimberly Lebbing, I love you. Your work is phenomenal. I am honored that you would come on and spend time on this podcast with me. I'm grateful. I get so much out of your work and what you're up to. And thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Audience, as always, if you could just take a second right now and hit the like and subscribe button, it means the world to Kim and I just to know that we're hitting the buttons for you and that you're here. It's like a thank you, and it feels great when you do it. So if you could take a second and do that now for us, I'd be grateful. And we look forward to seeing you guys again. Kim, thanks for being on the show.